Yeah, choosing this trombone was quite an ordeal because I'm very fortunate that the manufacturer sponsors me. So I went to the warehouse, I went to the place where they actually make it, not the warehouse, and chose the metal and chose the bore of the instrument.
Right.
And it's quite, you can get quite a varied selection. And I took an instrument, a whole set away, the slide section, the bell section. I took it away,
right.
Practiced it for a while, went back to the shop because it didn't feel like it was projecting the right way. So they said, well, if you use this metal and use this bore of slide, it projects in a different way to the one that you've got, which the sound goes like this, as opposed to this metal that goes. So I've changed a lot of the elements and
right.
come out with the right kind of trombone to suit the sound that I want.
Okay.
And they're very great. Michael Rath trombones, superb.
This is Dennis Rollins. Dennis is over for the Guinness Cork Jazz Festival. He's flown in from Manchester this morning. Was the gig last night?
No.
Oh.
Preparation last night.
Oh, preparation last night. Okay, there you go. The Guinness Cork Jazz Festival is coming up the October bank holiday weekend. There is a massive lineup, including Dennis. But Dennis, I suppose one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, I was thinking about this on the way over, was, what's jazz? See, I told you it'd be a hard one.
That's a great question. And,
yeah.
you know, jazz means a lot of things to different people. Mm-hmm. I feel that jazz is the ability to take a music, improvise, and stretch it beyond the bounds of what it's normally known.
Okay.
It's quite
and
a broad question.
It's a very difficult question, but I was on your website
yes.
over the weekend. You have 3 albums, isn't it? Today?
3 albums, yeah.
3 albums today. People can listen to some of your music on your website. It's a brilliant sound, but it's not something that I would have said is jazz.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in any sort of bad way. I just mean that there's such a variety of sounds there. You don't seem to be limiting yourself to it's a smoky jazz club and I must play like this.
Yes, I mean that I would look at that more as a traditional jazz, straight ahead bebop sound than what you're describing to me there.
Yeah.
But you know, I come from a culture where dance music is still prevalent, and you also have to look at the fact that originally, way back in the 1920s, jazz was a dance music. And so, you know, you look at the 20s, you're coming into the 30s with the swing era, still dance music. Mm-hmm. And then you come in 50s, 60s, and then we're moving into the bebop era, which, you know, it started moving more into, if you like, into the intellect for me.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I suppose television and movies would have glamorised it as being the smoky and the clicking fingers and whatever. But anybody who's been to the festival down in Cork will know that it's getting up out of your seat and it is dancing.
And that's what it is, you know. And, you know, you look at the youth of today or even the youth of yesterday, and, you know, I try and make that connection between jazz and dance. I try and just bridge that gap. Now, I can do intellectual with my music, but with Bad Bone and Co, that wasn't the idea. The idea was to connect to ordinary, if you like, or the ordinary man on the street, someone who hasn't heard jazz before, and connect to that person and just introduce them to jazz, make them feel that they've heard jazz, make them feel that they've heard this style. You know, they turn on the radio and they've heard the beats, they've heard the kinds of grooves. I wanted to introduce jazz to that kind of beat and so get closer to the general public with that.
And where did the love of jazz come from for you?
Well, it started it started way back when I was 14. When I first started playing the instrument, I first started in brass bands and orchestras.
In South Yorkshire?
In South Yorkshire. Brass bands in South Yorkshire.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
And I was introduced to the local jazz association, the Doncaster Jazz Association, where I played a Count Basie number. I can't remember which one it was. But I played a Count Basie chart, and I heard, as an introduction to the music in the band, the leader played a big band chart on the stereo, and that was my first introduction to jazz.
And had you been playing the trombone before?
I had, yes, just for a little while, maybe a year.
And what made you pick up an instrument like the trombone?
Well,
it's not exactly something you bring to parties. You might bring to parties.
Well, the thing is, at school, my brother played trombone before me.
Okay.
And he played for 2 years before I even picked it up.
Right.
But within that 2 years that he played, I used to sit and watch him in the bands. I used to sit and watch the slide positions. I used to just clock the notes on the music, and it just basically stemmed from there. I became the jealous sibling. I can do that. So when he got his new trombone, I got the old beat up one,
right?
The cast off,
right?
And it started from there.
And what's he doing now?
He plays with the Jules Holland band.
Okay, so he's still playing.
Yeah, so he's still playing.
Excellent.
He's still playing professionally.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we've just both taken different routes. You know, I've decided to sort of go the soloist route and have my own groups. He's happy to stay in Jules Holland's band. So, but hey,
playing with some of the top musicians.
Yes.
As well. Are you heavily influenced by modern music, by other music?
Yes, and I mean the way my music's changed is I think more and more since the first Bad Bone album in 2000, more and more I'm feeling the leaning towards jazz and all of an influence closer to jazz, closer to, if you like, playing my instrument as opposed to just playing grooves and working that way.
Right.
So, you know, I've got a new trio, which is an organ trio.
Okay.
That's surprising in itself. An organ
trio
trio with a trombone.
Yeah.
I call it the Velocity Trio.
Okay.
And the angle of music is, at its core, jazz, but it's fused with the funk.
Right.
So, you know, if you can imagine, we've got a straight ahead element within that, a very strong element of straight ahead, but it's also fused with the funk, it's also fused with a lot of the Latin flavors. So it really goes sort of jazz and funk, Afro-Cuban, and we sort of really mix it up.
Okay.
But it's a high energy thing, it's not a shy and retiring.
And with the bass, when you're gigging,
yes.
As opposed to recording, do you find yourself, I wouldn't say improvising much, is the word improvising? The word is improvising,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes.
Do you find yourself improvising much?
I do, and it's I think more and more I'm learning how to stretch the improvisation.
Okay.
And interestingly, with a lot of the songs, you know, you have your theme, and you have your theme, play your theme, and then you solo section, theme out or whatever. Mm-hmm. I find more and more that I have skeleton themes, so that the improvisation is a lot freer, even within the context of a groove thing. You know, at the moment, I'm really into stretching the improvisation more.
Have there been any acts that you have worked with that you have just loved the experience, loved the music, I suppose being on stage with?
Yes, Courtney Pine Band.
Okay.
And that's particularly working with Courtney, simply because he's really pushed me in a massive way. He's pushed me in a massive way, and I must never forget that, because he's that voice in the back of my head that's always pushing me, even today.
Okay.
Also, I mean, I have to definitely have to say Mr. Maceo Parker. I'm currently working with him.
Right.
And if you can imagine growing up as a child and listening to James Brown music, listening to Maceo Parker himself as a child, and suddenly I'm on stage with him.
Right.
That's a big thing.
That's a big thing.
It's a big thing. And, I remember my first gig with Maceo Parker, and he normally has a 3-horn front line. This time the trumpet player couldn't make it. It happened to be my first gig. Okay. So my first gig with Maceo Parker is Maceo Parker and myself.
Wow. And
it was a good job I did my homework because I didn't have anyone to sit back on. But it still blows me away that I'm working with such great artists. And I don't take that lightly at all. It's a pleasure and it's a real honour to work with the likes of two great artists like that. Obviously, I've worked with many more, and with anyone who I work with, I give them the same respect, even if it's someone who isn't as well known. They deserve respect, for what they're bringing to the world.
It's coming up to Cork time, as we said. Yes. Now, you were in Japan at the start of this year.
Yes.
And you're coming back to Cork for the 3rd time, isn't it?
Yes.
Is there a big, different cultural audience reaction to jazz music around the world, do you find? Or is it one of those horrendously cliched unifying factors where we'll all just get up and dance to a good tune?
Well... Well, I don't think everyone gets up and dances to a good tune. Some people do like some cultures do like that intellectual thing. But at its core, everyone wants to enjoy themselves. Everyone wants to feel that connection with the band and feel that the band is actually giving. Again, I'm fortunate that I've been in groups where the band will give to an audience, not just play, but give, and then you get that back as a musician. Being in Japan is fantastic because the enthusiasm is almost, I don't want to say over the top, but it's quite overwhelming.
Okay.
Whereas in South London or something, it'll be a little more impress me, or in England in general, it's either impress me or okay, that was all right. So it's great to feel the different dynamics of audiences around the world. And
you were commenting that no matter where you are around the world, that the Cork Jazz Festival is known.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And is this part of why you're coming back for the 3rd time?
Well, absolutely. I'm absolutely happy to be back with Maceo Parker Band as a guest in Maceo Parker's band. But if it was up to me, I'd be here every year with my own band because I love playing here. Okay. I love being here, and I do hope that one time I can bring my trio here because I feel that it's something that the audiences would love. Yeah. It's just a great festival. As I said, it really is well known around the world as an international festival, and that's an international jazz festival, and that's a great thing.
What can audiences expect?
What can audiences expect from Maceo Parker?
From Maceo Parker, yeah. Or from you.
Well, as I said, I'm part of Maceo's group, and Maceo is, firstly, as everyone knows, he's a legend. I would expect to be off your seats, jumping around, dancing, and just being a part of his infectious group and groove. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that always knocks me out, is how the band can sit on a groove and just make it sizzle, how they connect to an audience in such a fantastic way. Great solos. I must say, Maceo always says 98% funk, 2% jazz.
Okay.
He's got more jazz than that. He's got more jazz than that. Even though it's almost like he should really change that and put the percentage higher than 100%. He's got so much jazz and funk, but funk is what he does, and he really delivers it in spades. So